Motivation is a very tricky topic to discuss, purely for the fact that every individual is different. Not all are equal, and what works for me might not necessarily work for someone else. For example, someone might have an interest in reading books or graphic novels, whilst others might have interest in playing video games, photography, even sometimes doing the thing that you're passionate about can keep you in a state of zen, so to speak. Now, it's not necessarily drawing, say a final piece or a big project, but more studying, sometimes doing things that aren't strenuous, unlike having a very finalized and very perfected result, sometimes give you an equal amount of relaxation or an equal amount of relaxation period as what something like playing a video game would or reading a book would. Now, for me, motivation, it's a very tight rope. It's a very, let's just say, it's unsteady ground. And if I go over one side too much, it'll dip my motivation. If I go over on the other side too much, it'll become too monotonous. For example, I found that for me, I love video games. Always have done since I've been really young and always will do. But the problem with playing video games is that the more I invest my time in it, the more I get sucked up into that system and that sort of mindset. It can very much demotivate me when trying to come back to art. Sometimes I struggle to get my zen back again or get my mood back, whilst other times I'm not struggling at all. Recently, I've been struggling on the piece I'm working on, and it's become very monotonous. But that's the other reason why I can sometimes fall off that scale, is because what I'm doing is very repetitive. What I'm doing is it's not very different. Sure, it might be drawing. Sure, it might be sketching. But if it's a repeated pattern over and over and over and over again, it can sometimes drain me out very quick, depending on what that is. Now, obviously, if I'm drawing a lot of people, that might be a bit different because people have different poses, have different expressions, have different mood to them. Whereas something like texture work can sometimes be very, very monotonous and repetitive. Especially recently with my current work, there's a lot of brickwork involved. And of course, there's a lot of texture involved in that. And doing every single brick one by one, texture-wise, can be a very repetitive and very mundane, very boring process. But as soon as I pick up my pencil again, draw another part of it or something else, that goes away. No issues. I get that energy again, I get that flow again, and I'm all good. Now for me, I need to be very careful. Like I mentioned beforehand, if I play too many video games, I get sucked into that and it can be very static. I feel like I'm still not doing much creatively. Even when watching maybe the scenery of a video game, doesn't necessarily mean that my mind is still zoned into drawing. It's very much focused on playing games. That's the good side of it, because if I really want to take some time away from art, video games is my number one place to go to because it distracts me very quickly. 1 minute I'm drawing, the next minute my instant? It'd be great if I could speak for 2 minutes, wouldn't it? What I was trying to say was, 1 minute I'm fine, I'm drawing and everything's all right. The next, if I need a break, I can just switch my mind off very quickly and just get to playing a game. Video games have been the one thing, or one of few things that have been able to set my mind apart from my work. Now, like I mentioned, overdrawing, as I've explained previously, can have the reverse effect. It feels like I'm stuck, that I'm not progressing, that I'm not going anywhere. And that can sometimes be worse than the first one. Because even though the first one, it throws you off track and you know you have to get back into that zen moment and you have to get back into drawing. The latter, which is this one I'm talking about, it's almost as if you lose interest in drawing and you want to just stop as a whole. Because you are drawing and you're not getting that satisfaction from what you're drawing. That can be more dangerous than just getting too involved in video games. So it's that very much tightrope that I have to constantly balance on and be careful of. Now, usually I'm the kind of artist who doesn't like to move on from one project to another without completing it. But I think I'm going to have to get into that mindset of doing that, because in a way, in an essence, it helps me break my mind off from that project. And it helps me think of another project and draw something different. And then when I come back to that previous one, I can start that cycle over again, because I'm like, right, I've gone away long enough from this where I feel like it's almost new. Now, the other area that I want to talk about as well is still motivation related, of course, is that when you still keep that spark of motivation, but from what you are doing that requires a motivation. So for example, you need motivation to draw for me, but you can still attain motivation via drawing. It depends on how you do it. For me, the best way to break back into drawing again, if I've stepped away from it, or if I want to try and rekindle that flair, is by studying. By studying what, you may say? Well, depends on how you want to challenge yourself. If you want to study something that you're very familiar with, which I recommend if you want to just break into something very easily and just get that spark back, study something that you're already very aware of and that you want to learn a bit more of. For me, that's human anatomy. Hands down, always the go-to when I want to just try and get back in. Because if you start frustrating yourself on something that you don't know and you want to try and learn it, then that can be very detrimental, and that can be very discouraging, I'd say. You don't want to get into an art piece and just get immediately frustrated that you can't do what it is you're trying to do, and then toss that project aside and say, no, I've had enough. That's the worst thing that can happen from any of this, is that you lose that spirit. You lose that part of your soul that wants to put your own heart onto the page. Not literally. Hopefully not. But metaphorically. Your heart and soul wants to go onto the page. And if you can't bring yourself to do that, then you lose that motivation very quickly. So it is a very challenging topic when it comes to motivation. For a lot of people, that is going to be something different. You might relate to me. You might relate to someone else. Who honestly knows? I can't say that for sure. But what I can say is that more than likely what you're doing right now to get your mind off art or to focus on art are the stepping stones to get motivated again. Another big one for me is music. I know a lot of artists don't like to listen to music whilst drawing, and very occasionally I'm like that as well. Every now and then I just want to listen to absolute silence and peace and serenity. I don't want to hear a note or a pin drop. All I want to hear is the scratching of graphite on a very smooth piece of Bristol board, or the rubbing of my Apple Pencil on my iPad. As long as it's something like that, that's all that matters. That's all I want to hear. Now, everyone's interest in music is very different. Again, you got to find the music that really brings that motivation out in you. For me, I only listen to a very small scope of genres when it comes to music, mostly rock. Not gonna lie, I'm a bass head. And I love to listen to that sort of stuff, especially when I have headphones or when I have my Bluetooth speaker on the side and I just get in the groove. That is my number one way of getting into it and just zoning in and being very deeply motivated with what I'm creating. For others, it could be classic music. For others, it might be hip-hop, house, jazz, rap, whatever your interest in music is. More than likely, that is a very good tool to use when creating artwork. But you have to find that in yourself. Like I said before in this recording, more than likely the things that are going to motivate you, you have already found. You just need to try and find a way to implement them when drawing. But that's the tricky part. Trying to find a place, a home for where that tool isn't needed. Look at any other creative profession. Look at any other profession that requires DIY hands-on work. You get the wrong tool for the wrong job, you're going to backstep. It's going to take you longer to get back to where you need to be. But if you have the right tool for the right job, you are on the road to motivation. You know what it is that motivates you. Try to put that into your work ethos, into your planning, into your schedule. Try and put that in when you're creating as much as you can, because I can guarantee you can going to go much further than what you would do without it. But that's not to say that without anything, you can't do it. You can do it. You just need to find the thing that's right for you. Sometimes an absence of something is the right something. I can only tell you what works for me, but it works for me. I am one of 8 billion people on this planet with a very different opinion, a very different mindset, skill set, point of view. I am very different, and not all those 8 million people are going to agree with me. Not every artist is going to like the work that I do. Not every artist is going to relate in the same way I do. Not every artist is going to understand what I'm saying, nor is every artist going to take on board what I'm saying. Because you know what's valid and what isn't. You know what's right and what's wrong for you. You just need to know what that is. Try everything that you can. Some people, they didn't know they loved rock music until they listened to it. Some people definitely don't like rock music, and that's fine. Again, everyone is unique in their own special way. You really do just need to find down. Apparently English is something that I need to really concentrate on. But see what I mean? I know I'm like this. This is me. This is the authentic me. Word gibbering, mouth blabbering me. And that's fine. Puts a smile on my face, gets me through the day. What's also me is that I joke about it, like I just did. For me, I can't, as embarrassing as it is sometimes, most of the time for me, if I come out with a joke and I just laugh it off, it no longer becomes embarrassing. But that works for me. And funnily enough, that probably relates very heavily to this topic. Like sometimes I'm drawing a line or my hand gets spasmed out, or like, you have one of those moments where you're really drawing very finely. You want to try and get the right line and then you're like, my arm's gone. What's happened? Sometimes I get those moments where my eyes are so fixated and concentrating so much on that one point that they just spasm out left, right, and they rapidly look left and right, left and right, left and right, and it leaves me with a headache. Because that's how hard I'm concentrating. Luckily, it doesn't happen as much now. I've learned my lessons and don't look very close to the paper. Keep some distance and, have adequate amount of lighting when you're drawing. But I've learned my lesson and I know what works and I know what doesn't. What doesn't work, you discard and throw it out there. Or you leave it on a shelf and say, right, I feel like I might have something, but I don't know what it's for yet. Otherwise, just discard it. But yeah, it's just literally finding what motivates you. And for me, if I make a mistake, I laugh it off. And I'm just like, what was I thinking? What am I doing? Just grab a rubber, and then just redraw again. This is another thing that I want to touch upon as well. The big downfall of trying to stay motivated is being too critical of yourself. Saying, I can't do this. Why am I doing this? Like, this piece is going sideways. It's hopeless. There's no salvaging it. This, that, whatnot. I'm throwing it away. That is one of the biggest demotivators. Full stop. Because you're giving up. You're saying, right, I'm waving the white flag. That's it. I'm giving up for the day. C'est la vie. No, don't do that. The worst thing that can happen is that you mess up the piece. That's it. But a lot of people think when I say that, but if that means that I've messed up the piece, that means I have failed, that means I've not done it right, that means this, that. Okay, granted, it does mean that. But how you interpret that information really does determine on how motivated you are in creating that piece still. For a lot of people, unfortunately, they just leave it at that. For me, however, when I can, guaranteed I have my good days and bad days. When I can, I say, yes, I failed. Yes, I've messed up this piece. Yes, I need to tear it up and throw it away. But I can always start again. I can always do it again. Which is why a lot of the times when I'm drawing, you won't see me ink straight onto the penciled page. Any comic artist has a penciled page first, and that's the beginning stage of drawing on this blank canvas or creating something on this blank canvas. You draw with pencil first, and then afterwards you come in with the inks and you make it more permanent rather than temporary, because graphite's only temporary. It's the ink that's permanent. But I never ink on my penciled page, because if I do and I mess up big time, that is it. I've now got to redraw the penciled page. What I normally do is once I finish my penciled page, I get my light box, I masking tape my penciled page onto it, and then I masking tape a blank page on top. And then I literally trace my own work. It's not cheating, I'm tracing what I've already created. But it works, because if I do mess up, if I do make a bad mistake, I've not lost much. I've only lost the inked page. The pencil page is fully intact. It's not been marked. It's not been damaged. It's not been changed. It is essentially still as was, unaffected. And then all I gotta say is, right, throw away that page. Let's stick on a new one and try inking again. Rather than saying, great, I've done the penciled work, I've done the ink work on top of it, it's failed, I've messed it up, now I've got to resketch it. You've already saved yourself a lot of time and a lot of energy. So sometimes thinking smarter about how to tackle your work ethic or how to produce work can really keep you motivated at the right moments. Because starting from the very beginning is way more demotivating than starting with just inking. So motivation comes in all shapes and sizes. Not one is the same as the other, nor should it be. But that's the whole fun point of it. The whole fun point of it. That makes a lot of sense. The whole fun, you know what, we're going to stick with that. The whole fun point of it. The point of it, that's the whole point of it. I'll tell you one thing. I'm a very anxious person by nature. Hence why I stumble a lot on my words. But even though I'm nervous and anxious, I still somehow manage to speak. Why? Because I use that nervous energy into something positive. It's not an easy thing to do. It took me quite a long time to try and somewhat master it. But occasionally my nervousness slips through the cracks and it makes me stumble on my words. But that's where my humorous side comes in. Shrugs it off and says, you know what? That's just me. Laugh at it. Take it on the shoulder. So yeah, that's just me in a nutshell, really. But anyways, what we're doing, off topic, back to motivation. But it's all these, even though I've went off on a tangent, it still somehow relates to motivation. You're staying on the positive side of things, not the negative. At the end of the day, if you look at everything on a very negative note, it's going to severely demotivate you. But if you look at it on the upside, if you plan ahead and think positively, you're going to stay in the fight for much longer than you realize. What tools you use at your disposal, what techniques you want to develop or take on board, what route you wish to go on, what way you wish to present yourself, your mindset, your heart and soul, basically. If you wish to go forward positively and think positively, you will stay more motivated for much longer. It's a very tricky topic, this one, motivation. But I do hope you've learned something useful today. I hope you've gained some sort of insight on how my work ethic is. and how you can use some of those tips into your own work. I do hope you seriously learned something today. I'll catch you on the next one. Take care of yourselves out there. Bye-bye for now.